We're live for the Week 5 edition of the Phil Steele Show, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Trip Herd, David Kahn, alongside our guy Phil Steele. We're here to break down another loaded college football slate, get you ready to make some picks for this weekend. The views keep going up each week on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, for listening. Interact with us on the chat here. Tell us your picks. Tell us what games you want to hear about. Phil, we had one viewer last week. They mentioned UNLV. I forgot to slip this game in at the back end of the show. It's unfortunate because it was one of the games of the week in college football. Rebels had 31 in the fourth quarter to come back from the dead and cover a 2.5-point spread. Were you locked in on that one, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Miami led that thing 24-10 at the half. Key play in the game happened when their quarterback, the Toledo transfer, Daquan Finn, threw up a pass, and it was on third down. So it was just sort of past, if it's intercepted, big deal. It got intercepted, returned all the way. He got injured on the play.
Yeah.
They still led by 14 in the fourth quarter. UNLV tied it, but Miami's driving down. They've got the game-winning field goal. They're right in the middle of the field. Fumble. And UNLV gets the win. So it was definitely a tough beat for Miami of Ohio last week.
Definitely a bad beat there. DK, I hope you had better luck last weekend. No bad beats on your card, hopefully.
Well, I had Nebraska to cover the spread, and they lost by the hook. So I'm gonna just hang my head there real quick. That was a tough one to lose. Phil, I have a question for you. Is your back door all the way closed and locked this weekend? Because it needs to be after all those dang backdoor covers that came in a week ago. Come on.
Oh my goodness, it was some of those were in the nightmarish area as well.
Oh, so terrible. We need to get rid of the backdoor covers for some of these teams this week. It was too many. I kept seeing them happen, and I just have to. I'm going to double lock. I'm going to buy another padlock for my backdoor this week. It can't happen, Trip. It can't happen.
You got to watch the back door, buddy. Why don't you take us away to Thursday? We got a good one to start the week off.
Yeah, we certainly do. We have Army and East Carolina starting us off on Thursday night. Army at 1-2, East Carolina at 2-2. Both these teams coming off home losses, ECU falling to BYU, who made a 2,200-mile trip last week and came away with the win over the Pirates. ECU, Phil, has traditionally struggled against the triple option, which is Army's bread and butter, yet ECU's the favorite right now by 4.5. Where do you think this one goes?
Yeah, and last year when they played, Army got out to a huge lead, led 24-0 at the half, and was turned out to be the final game for head coach Mike Houston. And they now have had the entire year to try to prep for Army, but I just think when you look at Army, it's one of those games that they need to win this. And I know Tripp's against it. He's got the under on Army this season. But, they lost to Tarleton State, but upset Kansas State on the road. Very impressive game. And last week against North Texas, what happened in that game, Coleman got injured early, so Helms came in. Helms had like 3 turnovers in the first half. And those set up North Texas for a big lead. North Texas led something like 21-0. Army settled down, came back, got the thing into overtime. In fact, I believe they kicked a field goal at the end to take it to overtime when they were at the 6-yard line. They almost won the game in regulation, ended up losing it in overtime. So they've been impressive against Kansas State and North Texas. Against Tarleton State, they were impressive. They led by 14 in the third quarter. I'm going to take Army plus the points here in a potential upset.
All right, I'm going to let Army slide this week, Phil. There's a team I'm a little bit more concerned with. It's my Florida State Seminoles. They've got a tough game on Friday night. Phil, I remember Thursday night back in 1995, November 2nd, was my dad's birthday. FSU got their first loss in conference play after joining the ACC at Virginia. 14-year-old Trip was devastated. If only they had instant replay back then, I think maybe work done, got that ball across the goal line. We'll see. I don't know. FSU going back to Charlottesville Friday night. This should be another good one between two vastly improved teams from just a year ago. Noles 3-0 straight up and against the spread. Cavaliers 3-1. That lone loss to NC State was a shootout. Could have went either way, but Chandler Morris really has breathed some life into the UVA offense this year. Top 20 in yards per game through the air. FSU not throwing so much with Castellanos, but they've got one of the best rushing attacks we've seen so far this season in college football. Should be a real test for Florida State here, Phil.
Yeah, I think it will be. You look at Virginia's offense, and the numbers are outstanding. They're averaging 252 yards on the ground, 6 yards a carry. They've allowed 1 sack, and they're completing 68% of their passes. No wonder their offense is averaging 120 yards above what their opponents allow. But I've been just super impressed with Florida State. I think they are a top 10, legitimate top 10 team. I like the way they controlled the line of scrimmage against Florida. They've been nothing but, against Alabama. They've been nothing but dominant these last 2 weeks against East Texas A&M and Kent State, as you would expect. No letdown, over 700 yards both games. I think this is a Florida State team capable going on the road. And while Virginia's offense has been so potent, they haven't taken on a defense like Florida State. So I like the Seminoles to go into Virginia and come out of there winning this one by a touchdown or more.
14-year-old Trip and current age Trip. I won't age you right now, Trip. Are thrilled by that.
A lot more years.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. Another year older, another year wiser, as we say. Another team that has gone on the road and already won a game is in our next matchup, Phil. 9 p.m. on Friday night. TCU on the road at Arizona State. Horned Frogs have already got that road win in Chapel Hill over UNC. That was, we don't need to talk about that one again from UNC's side. But TCU at 3-0, Arizona State at 3-1. I got to admit, Phil, I am in love with TCU. Josh Hoover and Eric McAllister are a well-oiled machine, and they absolutely dumped all over SMU last week. But Arizona State, they got that statement win at Baylor. So tight matchup. The line is a little too tight. I don't know if you even have a side in this one because both these teams look like they're trending in the right direction, but should be a great game regardless in the Big 12.
Yeah, and the two teams have combined 0 losses in Big 12 play. So really, we're going to see it all season long. There's like 7-8 contenders in the Big 12. And when they meet, it's elimination games. And so this is a big one for these teams. Both are capable of getting to the Big 12 title game. Arizona State defending champ. I haven't been blown away by Sam Leavitt this year. He's hitting 61%, got a 6-3 ratio. TCU has been very impressive. They did trail smooth last week, 24-21 in the fourth quarter. Then the Hoover to McAllister combination took over 2 long touchdown passes, and they pulled away to the 11-point win. Been more impressed with TCU, but Arizona State's the defending champ, tough to beat at home. I don't really have a play on this. I'll let one of you guys pick one here, but I think the spread's accurate at 3.
I will say the Sun Devils in their last 5 games as a home favorite of 7 points or less, they're 5-0. But maybe, Phil, you threw out a second half cover for USC last week. Let's watch a first half cover by TCU because they've covered 10 of those last 12.
Interesting.
Okay. I like that, Con. I like your thinking there. I agree with you, Phil, on Sam Leavitt. The numbers just haven't been there this year. But watching last week in the fourth quarter, the defense was so good for Baylor.
Oh.
And then they made one mistake. Leavitt saw the corner get turned around. Boom, burned him for 70 yards, flipped the whole game because they had Arizona kind of backed up towards their own end zone. But hopefully
Baylor turned the ball over 3 times. And as you mentioned, their defense held Arizona State to 3 field goals, despite the fact they were trying to give the game away.
Yeah.
Chat says TCU, by the way.
Chat says TCU. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk late kick in Corvallis on Friday night. Oregon State and Houston. The Cougars looking for their first 4-0 start since 2016. Houston also coming off a bye last week. Normally a good thing, but last season it wasn't. They were 0-2 off byes. Willie Fritz, well aware. The 42-14 defeat at Kansas, the 27-3 loss at Arizona last year. Wants to make sure that doesn't happen again. At quarterback, Wegman's been very good for Houston. No picks. He's been really good on the ground as well. Defense has been great. They forced 6 turnovers through 3 games. Oregon State, meanwhile, they're outgained by over 400 yards last week at Oregon. If you had the Beavers in that one, you may have gotten the push for their first non-loss against the spread this year. It was 34. Maybe that's improvement, I guess. But Oregon State, Phil, they've already got 3 strikes with me. They're off my card. Do you think there's any chance Houston can get the cover on the road?
Well, the one thing I will point out about Oregon State is let's look who they faced. California, which has played very well this year. Fresno only has 1 loss. Texas Tech, maybe one of the best teams in the Big 12. Oregon, one of the best teams in the country. So they have played 4 really tough opponents, but unfortunately for them, they get a 5th one. And you start to wonder in the era of the transfer portal, when teams open up 0-4, are these players now starting to think, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? What's up for next year? Meanwhile, Houston, despite the fact they had a losing record last year, they actually have one of the best defenses in college football. They held opponents to 75 yards per game below their average, number 15. Their problem last year was offense. And this year they have an offense. They brought in Connor Wegman from Texas A&M. They brought in Dean Connors, who I thought was the best player on Rice's roster last year. He's having a big year, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. So they now have an offense. They're off a bye. And I think this Oregon State, which used to be almost unbeatable at home, is really at 0-4. You wonder how the crowd is going to be for this. I don't think they'll be at the same level they were 2-3 years ago when they were unbeatable at home. So I'm going to lean with Houston in this one, but the buyer beware would be the fact that Oregon State has played the second toughest schedule in the country.
Buyer beware indeed. As we go to the Saturday slate, Phil, noon start, number 20, or we go USC at 4-0. They just beat Michigan State last week. They are at Illinois, who had their lunch money taken from them multiple times by Indiana last week. Holy smokes. Nobody saw that coming. But hat tip to Indiana for just demolishing Illinois a week ago. USC, though, kind of on wagon watch. Jaden Mayava hasn't thrown a pick yet. And Illinois, as we mentioned, trying to get back up and, dust themselves off. Battle in the trenches, kind of interesting here. USC has 16 sacks this year. Illinois has allowed 16 sacks already. Trojans favored by just under a touchdown on the road. What do you got, Phil?
Yeah, I'm not wild about that matchup because Signetti even pointed out in the post-game comment, he said after watching, we've talked about that first half of Illinois against Duke. Duke's defensive line dominated their offensive line. He thought that they would be able to dominate Illinois as well and had 7 sacks in the game, held them to 2 yards rushing for the entire game. And as mentioned, USC among the nation's leaders in sacks and TFLs. I don't like that matchup. But what I do like is the line value here. Had this game been played last week, Illinois would be a 3-point favorite. But because they look so bad against Indiana, now USC is almost a full touchdown favorite on the road. And here's an interesting stat for you. And I spelled it out on my Phil Steele Plus tour with selections. Took you back and looked at each and every one of the games. USC, when they travel to the Eastern time zone or the Central time zone, is actually 1-13 straight up and 1-13 against the spread. Earlier this year, they got that straight up win when they traveled and beat Purdue, but got nowhere near covering against Purdue on the road. So anytime they make this trip, they tend to struggle. And now the line value clearly on Illinois. And coming into the year, I was high on Illinois. I still think they have the talent they had. I'm also concerned about their secondary. Last week at the end of the game against Indiana, they were down 6 of their top 7 DBs. They need to get some of those guys back, especially to competing against USC. Although USC's got 2 or 3 top receivers, don't really have the depth at the receiver position to exploit the secondary completely. But I'm going to lean with Illinois plus the points in this one.
All right, let's jump to the ACC. One of my second favorite team in college football this year, Georgia Tech, off to a great start. But you got a sleepy noon kickoff in little old Winston-Salem on Saturday. Let's not goof around here against Wake Forest, Georgia Tech. The chance to go 5-0 for the Jackets, head into their bye week undefeated. Haynes King, I think he's just about as good as any quarterback in the ACC when he's healthy. He might not throw for 400 a game, but he's just tough as nails. Absolute leader for the Yellow Jackets. Wake Forest, they haven't played since their last game in NC State. That was over. I think that would be over 2 weeks ago because they played on a Thursday or Friday night against NC State. They were competitive in that game, at least for a half or so. Are we comfortable laying over 2 touchdowns on the road here, Phil? It may be just under 2 touchdowns. I'm seeing 13.5 right now.
Yeah, and this would go back to what David said. Last week, Temple scored with, 2 seconds left in the game for the backdoor cover and against Georgia Tech. But I like what Brett Key said after the win against Clemson. He goes, you know what? Next week's game is huge because of what you did this week. So he's going to have them fired up on a week-to-week basis. And they have next week off. So there's nothing to look forward to. And I just think Georgia Tech's a much better team, both offensively and defensively. And when you look at Wake Forest, to me, the key to stopping Wake is stop Damon Claiborne. In the opening game of the season, Claiborne got injured against Kennesaw State. They only put up 10 points. NC State, they got the kick return touchdown, then they got the long pass, which set up a touchdown. But they went 2 full quarters without getting a first down in that game against NC State. And NC State's not as good as Georgia Tech. I don't think the crowd's going to affect Georgia Tech. I do think they'll be motivated despite the sleepy atmosphere. So I'm going to go with Georgia Tech and lay the points in this one.
All right, next game. It should be a very intriguing one in Fayetteville. Number 24 Notre Dame or 22 Notre Dame, I should say, coming to Arkansas. Boy, Phil, the Hogs have just fallen on hard times the last couple weeks. 2 chances in the last 2 weeks. Ole Miss and Memphis, they blow the game late with a costly turnover in the final few minutes. I am wearing my Diamond Hogs home field apparel shirt in support of Arkansas because I feel like they need all the support they can get. And they're getting more support this week because home field apparel is coming to Fayetteville this weekend for the Arkansas Notre Dame game. So make sure you go check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. They're having a happy hour and a pop-up shop on Dixon Street today, on Thursday, from 6 to 10 p.m. Central. Have a whole bunch of stuff going on. A pregame party on Friday from 2 to 5 p.m. at Ye Hog. That's a place that only could exist in Fayetteville. So make sure you go check them out. If you can't get to Fayetteville, go to homefieldapparel.com. They have quality, thoughtful apparel for more than 190 colleges and universities. They are fantastic. They sent us some gear last week. We're excited. I'm repping my Diamond Hog shirt right now, homefieldapparel.com. But Phil, to the game. Arkansas, we mentioned their struggles. They've had a bit of butterfingers the last couple of weeks. Notre Dame got their first win last week, wiping out Purdue despite a lengthy weather delay. And the Irish are favored on the road, 3-1. Can they? Does Arkansas have any kind of magic in Fayetteville this weekend, or is it Notre Dame gonna take care of business against the Hogs?
Well, Sam Pittman's great as an underdog, and he's great against ranked teams. So I can never underestimate him. In my mind, this is play on team versus play on team. When you look at Notre Dame, their losses are to Miami of Florida and Texas A&M by 3 and 1 point. Those two are both top 10 teams. Notre Dame was basically within 1 play of winning them both. They could be 3-0 right now. And as you mentioned, David, you look at Arkansas, 2 fumbles at the end of the game. I thought they were driving for the winning score against Ole Miss, fumble. And then Memphis, they're just setting up for the game-winning field goal, fumble. And they could be 4-0 right now. They're that close to it. Taylor Green's looking great. And it happened last year. After 5 games, I believe Taylor Green had a negative ratio. But then all of a sudden he grasped the Bobby Petrino offense, was great down the stretch. And this year he's got a 12-4 ratio. But I also like what I've seen out of C.J. Carr. First-year starting quarterback, but a 5-2 ratio on the year. They've got Love and Price finally started to get going. Remember, Love and Price were basically missing in that first game of the season against Miami of Florida. But they've got them going, so they have a potent offense. I think these are 2 go-with teams. This is another one I'm going to throw at you guys. I think the spread's accurate where it is. Either of you guys have a strong play on this?
Well, Phil, what do you think about the over in this one? The total 63.5. Notre Dame's hit that in all 3 games this year, and both teams struggle against the other team's strength. Notre Dame's strength is running. Arkansas struggles against that. Notre Dame struggles against the pass. Arkansas with Taylor Green, as you so eloquently laid out, is that. So, points?
It's an Arkansas game. Arkansas games go over the total generally. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Good call there, David.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. Swiss cheese defense for Notre Dame so far this year. So I'd probably lean with the over too. 63.5. That is a lot of points for a Notre Dame game, thinking about that defense from last year, but it's just hasn't been the same story this year. Let's jump back to the ACC. Maybe a little under the radar game this week with, FSU, Virginia headlining on Friday. How about Louisville and Pitt? Cardinals a 4.5-point favorite, but they're 0-3 against the spread this year, and they're a little banged up coming into this one. Phil, Isaac Brown, Duke Watson, both dealing with leg injuries. Pitt has had a little bit of time to stew over that loss in a backyard brawl. Got to be ready to get back out there and get another game under their belt. Last season at Louisville, Eli Holstein, that's the game where he suffered his injury that sidelined him. Cards won that meeting 37-9, so maybe even a little revenge on Pitt's side this year. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, the home team has pretty much controlled this series. Pitt won the last time they hosted Louisville, and to me, one of the keys to the backyard brawl was Desmond Reed going out in the first quarter. Hopefully Reed's 100% healthy here. And if he is, then I think Pitt's got their complete offense. And I remember last year, Holstein in the first 7 games when they were 7-0 was outstanding. He got banged up, had an 0-2 ratio the final 5 games when he did play. It was mostly backups after that. So now 100% Holstein and Reed. That's a dangerous combination and not been blown away. If you watched the James Madison game, Isaac Brown, 2 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard. Then he had one big run at the end of the game. Now, granted, he does have that explosiveness, but I thought James Madison did a good job containing Isaac Brown. And we haven't seen much at all of Duke Watson this year. You know, believe it or not, Miller Moss came over and there was high expectations. How about 2 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions? So I'm not sure this is a premier Louisville team, despite their 3-0 record. I thought James Madison actually outplayed him in that game, had a 19-12 first down edge. I'm going to go with the home underdog here in Pitt.
All right, let's keep it in the ACC. Duke, roller coaster season so far, but they rebounded. They got the win at home last week over NC State. Blue Devils have been a little hard to figure out this season. We thought the defense would be the strength of the team, but it's given up a lot of points through their last 3 games. Syracuse shocked everybody last week at Clemson, winning straight up as a 17.5-point dog, but they lost their quarterback, Steve Angeli. He was leading the country in passing going into that game. So now we're going to see Ricky Collins take over at quarterback for the Orange. Syracuse a home dog this week, Phil. They're getting 5.5 in the Dome. What do you like here?
Yeah, and I thought one of the key plays in the Duke-NC State game was NC State was up late in the second half by close to a touchdown, had the ball. Duke jumped off sides, so the quarterback took a chance, threw an interception return for a touchdown, didn't call the offsides, and I thought that really changed the game as it was. Duke benefited from +4 in turnovers in that game. As you mentioned, Duke's pass defense actually ranks number 130 in my pass defense rankings. And boy, you'd love it if Steve Angeli was there. But let's keep in mind that this offense, last year, they brought in a transfer in Kyle McCord. McCord did extremely well. Now Angeli had no real prior experience, really. A couple of games he played as a backup, and he has adapted well to the offense. Ricky Collins, their quarterback for this week, was the number 1 quarterback out of spring. Remember, Angeli was signed after spring practice, and they had all kinds of confidence in him. So I think he can step in, do a good job. I was really impressed with Syracuse last week. They played much better than they did against Connecticut, a game they probably should have lost. And Tennessee, they had their moments in the Tennessee game. They played a really good Tennessee team. So I like the home underdog here. I think Syracuse can pull the upset.
All right, last game in the noon window for us, Phil. Cincinnati at Kansas. The Bearcats opening up Big 12 play off a bye. Kansas just absolutely pummeled West Virginia last weekend in Lawrence, 41-10. So both these teams fresh, feeling good about themselves, and they both have really solid quarterbacks. Brendan Sorsby an 8-1 ratio, Jaden Daniels a 6-1 ratio. I think this is another one. Kansas is favored by 4.5 at home. I don't love the spread, but I love the over. It's only 56.5, and I feel like this is shaping up to be a classic Big 12 offensive showcase. What do you think?
Yeah, you definitely have the quarterbacks to get there. And when you look at the teams defensively, though, Kansas is holding opponents to 85 yards per game below their average, since he's holding them to 58. So both have respectable defenses in this. But that might be, I don't have a side in this because I can't go against Kansas at home, especially the way that Jalen Daniels is playing. It looks like the Jalen Daniels of a couple years back. But Cincinnati with Satterfield, his first year he came in there, it was your typical first-year head coach, brand new team, extremely inexperienced. And even last year, they were very inexperienced. Well, this year, they have an experienced team. They're ready. And I know it was a neutral site game, but Nebraska had 95% of the crowd. So they traveled to Nebraska and lost by 3. They played a really good game there. And if you could play within 3 of Nebraska, you should be able to play within 3 of Kansas. I'd find a tough time going against either of these teams. So I might take your recommendation there, David.
All right.
What do you got on a trip? Anything?
I don't know, Phil, to be honest with you, that was one of the lines that kind of jumped out to me. And I wondered, is this a little bit fishy? Because at first glance, I thought Kansas would have been favored by a little bit more, but that makes a lot of sense. Maybe if anything, I would go with Cincinnati on the side right now.
Okay. There you go. Trip says pound Cincinnati.
Bet your mortgage on the Bearcats
from the doctor.
Just like Phil said to put your mortgage on Harvard last week. If they were getting 39.5 against Stetson. Come on.
Yeah. All right. Top ranked team in the land, Ohio State. They've got a tough road test this week on the road at Seattle to face Washington. Buckeyes off a bye. They've only allowed 16 points through 3 games. We know they're loaded with talent on the other side of the ball on offense. But Washington is damn near unbeatable at home. Phil, I know you keep this stuff up there stored in your brain. I want to put David on the spot here. Do you know the last time Washington lost a game at home?
Oh, it's been 4 years, I think, right?
That's pretty good. You hit it right on the head. November of 2021, the Apple Cup. Since then, they've been perfect on Montlake. Speaking of the Apple Cup, the Dogs just won that last week. Damon Williams, another big game, but it's going to be a different level test against the Buckeyes. Spread opened in double digits. It's down to 8.5 right now. Phil, what do you think here?
Yeah, and how many times, this is the 5th week of the show this year, how many times have I mentioned first-year starting quarterbacks, first road start, and how many of them have struggled? Arch Manning, etc.
Yeah.
And now Julian Sand, while he's had 3 games, they've all been at home, friendly atmosphere. Now he's playing in one of the loudest venues. I don't know Husky Stadium's enclosed, and the fans are rabid. This is one of the loudest venues in college football. They're going to be on fire for this game. And, Washington's got some weapons on offense. I like Damon Williams, the quarterback. He's getting 74% this year with a 6-0 ratio. Jonah Coleman, one of the best running backs in the country, nobody really knows about. And how about Denzel Boston, a wide receiver? Now, their secondary, they have 2 6'4" corners, but I think one of them's going to miss this game. That hurts a little bit. But this is a Washington team that's tough at home, as you mentioned, never loses. I think they match up well against Ohio State, and it's a first road start for Julian Sand. So I like the Huskies plus the points here, definitely, and possible upset.
Chad agrees with you, Phil. They're calling for a Washington upset alert. Our man Corey Cumbus in the chat says Washington upset alert. They're right there with you. Let's stay in the 3:30 window. Going back to the SEC. LSU at Ole Miss, number 4 at number 13. Both these teams unbeaten, very tight game as expected. Ole Miss favored by 1.5 at home. A lot of questions surrounding LSU, especially offensively. Brian Kelly's been getting into it with reporters. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, their offense, not a question. They just pummeled the heck out of my Tulane Green Wave last week. They're feeling real good about themselves, especially with Trinidad Chambliss at the controls. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, still dealing with that torso issue. What do you got here, Phil? What's the feel?
Yeah, I agree. When you look at Nussmeier, he's had 4 games. He's thrown for 960 yards. Trinidad Chambliss in 2 games has thrown for 718 yards. So you look, and the main thing here with Ole Miss is in the first 2 games of the year, Austin Simmons had 2 interceptions in both games. I think that slowed down the Ole Miss offense. Chambliss, who comes over from D2, is an experienced quarterback. And when I talk to the head coaches and go over these rosters with them, almost all of them agree that these guys moving up, as long as they have the experience, they tend to make it. And, Chambliss has got talent. This guy's a dangerous runner. He's got almost 200 yards rushing. He shows he's a highly accurate passer, hitting 68%. Hasn't thrown an interception. Now, the home team has actually won the last 5, and I believe they're 9-1 against the spread the last 10. So the home team dominates. And if you watch last year's game, you felt Mississippi was the better team. In fact, they did not trail a single second the entire game. LSU tied it on a late touchdown to force overtime, and their touchdown in overtime won the game, but there was no time on the clock naturally. So they didn't trail for a single second. They're playing with legitimate revenge in a series the home team dominates. And frankly, I'm impressed with Trinidad Chambliss. I'm going to call for Ole Miss in this one.
Yeah, Chambliss he's looked really good so far. Let's keep it in the SEC. Auburn, second tough road test in as many weeks. They're heading to College Station, taking on Texas A&M. Hugh Freeze ready to kill somebody last week in Norman after some of those calls, and they end up losing by 1 score to the Sooners. They need to do a better job keeping Jackson Arnold upright. They gave up 9 sacks last week. We know it's a very good Oklahoma defense. You also have to wonder about Jackson Arnold. Is he going to have the same edge this week as he did last week against his old team? Mike Elko probably watched that game thinking he's going to need to dial up some of that same kind of pressure. Aggies are off a bye after their win over Notre Dame. Vegas has this one made just about like last week for Auburn, a 6.5-point dog on the road here. Phil, what do you like in this one?
Yeah, and last week I liked Oklahoma minus the 6.5, and they just got there, and they were my number one surprise team in the country. My number two surprise team in the country is Texas A&M. And when I talked to Coach Elko in the offseason last year, went over the offensive line with them, he said, Phil, we're middle of the road in the SEC. This year, when I talked to him about the offensive line, he said, Phil, we are at the top of the SEC. We're a Joe Moore Award contender, and that's important to me because I'm on the Joe Moore Award committee. And they've looked at they're averaging 4.7 yards per game. They've only allowed 2 sacks. Now, as you mentioned, Tripp, they can get after the quarterback. They have 9 sacks this year. And we saw last week that Auburn's offensive line, especially on the road. See, when you're on the road, you cannot vary your snap count that much, or you get a lot of legal procedures. So the defense sort of knows when you're snapping the ball. It gives them that advantage. You find that teams allow a lot more sacks on the road than they do at home, and that's going to be the case here. Auburn in their home games had just allowed 1 sack in 2 of their home games this year, but on the road it's a different story. So I think you've got the crowd, you've got the fact that A&M is off a bye. They gained a lot of confidence with that win over Notre Dame with the late touchdown on 4th and 11 to win that one. They've got the running backs, they've got the defense that can get after them. I like the matchups and the situation. Auburn's coming off a big game, and now they have to travel again. So I'm going to go with A&M minus the points in this one.
Another team, Phil, who may have to limit their varying of their snap count is Utah as they try and get up off the schneid against West Virginia. They go to Morgantown this week. We've already mentioned the Mountaineers. They are down bad. They got whacked by Kansas. The injuries are piling up in the worst way. Nico Marchiol, Ty Edwards, 2 offensive linemen, a tight end, a linebacker, all questionable. Sincere Bowers, Landon Livingston, doubtful. And they get a pissed-off Utah team who's coming in a heavy favorite on the road in Morgantown by 12.5. Utah going to cover the spread as they try and re-put themselves on the map after Texas Tech showed them what's what in the Big 12?
Yeah, and personally, I think it's going to be Jalen Henderson that starts the quarterback for West Virginia this week. But quarterback is not the problem with West Virginia. When I went over the team with Rich Rod, we went 1 through 4 on their quarterbacks, and he felt the same about all 4. Feels he can run the offense. And Jalen Henderson is a very athletic QB, should be able to run it. But I am concerned with those offensive line injuries. And, I do a West Virginia podcast each week, and the guys were telling me how banged up the offensive line is. I said, well, it's a good thing you're not playing a good defensive line, huh? Well, knowing the fact that Utah has a great defensive line. They've had 10 sacks this year, can really get after the quarterback. And as you mentioned, David, they are an angry team coming off a loss. I think you'll see Dampier have a lot more productivity this week than he had last week. It surprised me how Texas Tech was able to slow him down. And let's keep in mind, you look at the final score last week, you see 34-10. It was 10-10 in the 4th quarter. Then all of a sudden, Texas Tech went to the backup quarterback, Will Hammonds, who can run the football very effectively. And Hammonds had a great 4th quarter, and they pulled away. So I think an angry Utah, banged up West Virginia. I like the Utes to go on the road and get the win here.
All right, bounce back spot for the Utes. Let's jump back to the Big Ten. I don't think anyone had a better week last week than Indiana. 63-10 over Illinois. Their last 3 times out, they've scored 63, 73, and 56. That's probably better than their basketball team's done here lately. Don't know if they can repeat that kind of score this week in Kinnick Stadium, though. The total, and first off, the total has moved down to 47.5 right now. Iowa's always tough at home. They're getting over a touchdown. Even though Cignetti's been great against the spread, Phil, I would have to think a lot of bettors are going to be intrigued by Iowa getting 7.5 at home this week.
Yeah, Phil Parker's the key. The defense coordinator for Iowa. I think he's one of the best defense coordinators in the country. He's got to come up with a scheme here, which I think he will, to slow down this Indiana offense. And keep in mind, in the opener, Indiana only had 27 points against Old Dominion. But they actually got in the red zone 7 times. Their problem was they only scored twice. They missed field goals, stopped on downs, or else they'd have a lot more points on the board this year. Dangerous offense. Cignetti actually feels that the best quarterback he's ever had is Fernando Mendoza. And remember, last year, Curtis Rourke was one of the top 10 Heisman finalists at the end of the year. Mendoza's been spectacular the last 2 weeks. I think he's missed on 6 incompletions, and he's had 10 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. So he's just on a phenomenal form. But Iowa at home, catching Indiana off a big home game, and now traveling on the road. I'm gonna side with Iowa plus the points. It's scary because Indiana looked really good last week.
They did.
Once again, I don't want to overreact to last week, so I'm going to take Iowa plus the points at home and go with some of that Kinnick Stadium magic to keep it close and potentially even pull the upset.
Yeah, this one screams letdown spot all the way. I mean, you can just feel it. Staying in the 3:30 window. By the way, thank you to everyone for listening and commenting along in the chat. Phil, we've got listeners from Mexico right now.
Awesome.
So we are reaching all parts of the country and beyond. All right. So thank you to everyone for listening right now. Cal at Boston College is where we go next, Phil. Still in the 3:30 window. The thing that surprised Tripp the most last week, I believe it was. Or was it the worst thing you saw? Cal smoked at San Diego State, 34-0. That was a stunner. I saw it Sunday morning. Tripp saw it Monday morning. We both were like,
thanks for bringing that up.
What? Yeah, well, sorry. Boston College, by the way, they lost 2 weeks ago at Stanford. So both these teams looking to get right. And really for Cal, that starting quarterback, JKS, as we call him now because we've tried to say his name so many times, he needs to bounce back in the worst way. So who gets right this week, Phil?
Yeah, and last week's 34-0 win was not like a dominant game like that. I mean, San Diego State had a 35-yard fumble return, the 97-yard interception return for a touchdown, and I think another time Cal got intercepted in the end zone, stopping a score. In fact, Cal actually had a 17-15 first down edge, and the yards were almost close. San Diego State only put up 321 yards against them, so it wasn't, generally in a 34-0 game, you're looking at 500 yards to 200 yards total domination. It wasn't that type of game. Turnovers were huge, but Sagapolatelli now goes on the road and is taking on a Boston College team. They got to travel clear across the country, and Boston College is off 2 losses. Now, the Michigan State game, I thought they were the better team than Michigan State in that game. And then Stanford, they were up at the half, up right before the half. It was 20-10. They gave up a touchdown, and then they gave up a turnover touchdown. It got 20-20. Then the clock struck midnight, literally. I mean, the game turned to early morning, and they didn't react well to the early morning atmosphere. Now they're off a bye, at home, off a loss. So I think the situation is really good for BC. And one guy I want you to keep your eyes on when you're watching this game is Dylan Lonergan. He's an Alabama transfer. He's looked really good this year. He's at 72% with a 9-1 ratio. He is taking on a good Cal defense, but I think he's going to have a big game. So I think BC's the better team, despite their 1-2 record. They're at home, catch Cal in a good situation. I like BC in this one, minus the points.
Yeah, absolutely right there. Lonergan, one of the more under the radar quarterbacks in the country right now. He's played well for BC. Let's talk Mississippi State. We've got 4-0 Mississippi State. We haven't been able to say that a lot recently. They're set to host Tennessee on Saturday afternoon in Starkville, 4:15 kickoff. Jeff Lebby worked for Josh Heupel at UCF. There's some familiarity there. 2 coaches know each other. They're both quarterback guys. They're both getting good quarterback play this season. Really good matchup here. Blake Shapen against Joey Aguilar for the Vols. Tennessee got right last week, beating UAB after that lone loss to Georgia the week before. It's the first road test for Tennessee. How do you think they're going to handle those cowbells, Phil?
Well, a couple notes on this. First of all, this is a game where I'm arguing with my computer because my computer's saying Mississippi State even possibly win the game. I just think Tennessee's the better team. And I know Mississippi State already upset Arizona State earlier this year. But if you look at Mississippi State, I think there's something like 3-12-1 as a home dog. They don't do great as a home dog with the cowbells going on. And Tennessee's won 7 of the last 8 in this series, all 7 wins by double digits. And here they're just laying 7.5. Now, my question marks with Tennessee coming into the season was, how do you replace the guy that just set your career all-time single-season rushing record? Well, they've done it with Star Thomas and Bishop. How do you replace Nico? And I think Joey Aguilar is a step up over Nico. He's got a 12-3 ratio this year. They've definitely have, while they lost their top receivers from last year, they definitely are upgraded. Brazel is one of the top guys that I've seen. He's made some tremendous catches. So Tennessee's offense is potent. I think Mississippi State's played well. They did upset Arizona State. They did beat a good Southern Miss team on the road, but I just think Tennessee's the better team here. Very impressive what I've seen from the Vols. I'm going to call for Tennessee to keep that series history rolling and take Tennessee minus the points.
All right, let's creep into the evening slate, Phil. A loaded evening slate, by the way. Holy smokes, two big ones we're going to talk about later. But let's start with the Big 12 matchup. Arizona at Iowa State. Both teams unbeaten. Both teams coming off a bye. Their first meeting, by the way, since 1968. Iowa State is laying 5.5 at home. Lower total, 48.5. Arizona, though, 3-0 against the spread so far this season, and they are getting 5.5 on the road. What do you see here, Phil?
Well, watching Iowa State this year, they've had 4 games where they really haven't had a good situation. They, first of all, playing in Ireland is distracting, out of the normal, and they still beat Kansas State. Coming back from that, they're in a letdown spot. They still beat South Dakota big. Talked to Coach Key at Georgia Tech last year, and he said the toughest game coming back from Ireland is the second game back. They survived that. They beat Iowa. And then still drawn out, Kansas State didn't survive this trip very well. Iowa State in the 4th game goes on the road and still comes out with a win. Now they're fresh off a bye at home. I think it's the best situation Iowa State's been in all year, and I think we'll see the best Iowa State football team all year. Meanwhile, let's look at Arizona. Yes, they're 3-0, and yes, they play great. But they took on a Hawaii team in the opener where Timmy Chang has only won twice on the mainland. And in that game, while they won it 40-6, they were actually out first down 21-16 and only had a 34-yard edge. Turnovers were the key factor, +5 in that game. They beat an FCS team. Yeah. And then last week, they took on Kansas State in that 4th game back from the trip to Ireland, a tired, bedraggled team, and also is extremely hot at game time. And it's been cool in Manhattan all summer. So it's by far the hottest temperature they played in. And it was 17-3 at the half. It turned out to be 20. They got a couple of late field goals, pull away 23-17. So I think this is the week where Arizona's actually in its worst situation of the year. First road game, first time they don't have the advantage, and Iowa State's in its best. And I think Iowa State's a better team. So I like the Cyclones minus the points here.
Little value there, under a touchdown right now, 5.5. So we'll see if the Cyclones can take care of business. Here's Phil, I want to talk. We're going back to the ACC. I don't know. This is another game that just stuck out like a sore thumb at me. NC State laying 10 at home this week, hosting Virginia Tech. It's a bounce back spot for the Wolfpack. They dropped their first contest of the season at Duke last week. Maybe just give the ball to Hollywood Smothers every play. He's been really good, over 100 yards in 3 straight games. Excellent running back there. The Hokies, they did beat Wofford last week for their first win. Philip Montgomery now in charge. I know we can't take away a lot from a game against Wofford, but Kyron Jones, he did have a couple of passing touchdowns. He ran for 2 scores, still playing hard. Since they joined the ACC, Virginia Tech has won 5 out of 8 against NC State, but the Pack have gotten the last 2. As a guy who's grown up right here close to Greensboro, North Carolina, the heart of the ACC, Phil, this just feels like a game NC State will lose. It looks like the spot is for NC State, but I'm telling you, I've seen it a million times. I know it's a double digit or 10, maybe it's down to 9.5 now. I side with the Hokies here. What do you like in this one?
All right, we'll go with you in the Hokies in this one, Trip. I'm personally torn. I guess my biggest question mark is last week in that game against Wofford, I believe there was 4 defensive starters that sat out contemplating transfer. I haven't got word whether or not they're returning to the team or not. And you worry about that a little bit. In this era of the transfer portal, now you got to the 4-game rule. Players can redshirt, transfer next year, not lose a year eligibility. You wonder how many players will sit out, how many will play. I can tell you if Virginia Tech decides to play, you remember watching that South Carolina game we saw in the opener? I thought they played South Carolina even up in the opener. First downs, they had 19-16 edge. If not giving up the punt return touchdown, then the one long pass touchdown. I thought they played South Carolina even up. So they're dangerous. I don't know their situation quite yet as far as how many players are sitting out this game, how many are back. But we're going to go with Tripp here. We're going to take Virginia Tech plus the points.
All right, going with Tripp with Virginia Tech there. Let's go to the 2 marquee games on the night slate, Phil. First one, number 17, Alabama at number 5, Georgia. Both teams off a bye. Georgia, of course, coming off that SEC win in the opener at Tennessee in overtime. Alabama pummeled Wisconsin, so this is the SEC opener for them. Georgia's always a good home pick. They've won 33 straight at home, but Alabama's won 8 of the last 10 in this series. And if we're talking spread, it's only 3.5. And Georgia's 1-6 against the spread in their last 7. Phil, what's going to happen here in between the hedges?
Yeah, I'll take the 3.5 in this game. I think the game's decided by 3, so 3.5 is very nice. And watching the two teams this year, the eyeball test, I think Alabama's the better team overall. The one area where I think you're going to see Alabama have success, and it's surprising because you're talking about a Georgia defense, is probably through the air. And, they've got Kalen DeBoer brought his offensive coordinator with him from Washington. They've got Bernard. They've got Williams, a receiver. Ty Simpson's having a good year. And Georgia gave up 371 yards passing to Tennessee in that game. So I think this is a game where Alabama's got more talent. They've won 9 of the last 10 against Georgia. They've dominated the series. Biggest question mark is what you hit on, David, which is Georgia hasn't lost at home in 33 games. They are not a good big home favorite. They stink as a big home favorite and when they lay points. But this is a win game for them. So I think as long as you're getting 3.5, I'm comfortable with Alabama. Should be a great game to watch. And I think it'll be a close, tight game. And unlike last week where I thought Illinois-Indiana was going to finish out like that, and it didn't. And I don't think there's any chance that this one turns into a 50-point blowout win.
Yeah, if you're going to roll with the tide, get that hook. Get it while it's 3.5. Another massive game on Saturday night. Number 6, Oregon at number 2, Penn State. James Franklin, good football coach. He is, but he still has some doubters out there. We all do. I mean, there's people that probably still question my picks every Saturday morning, believe it or not. James Franklin, though, a chance this week to just silence a lot of those critics if he can beat Oregon. Schedule's been a little soft so far for the Nittany Lions. They're moving way up in class with the Ducks in town. Penn State also yet to cover in a game this year, but they're going to want revenge for that Big Ten championship game last season where Oregon got the win. This will be the whiteout game. You got to wonder how Dante Moore is going to respond here. He's not a freshman, but he still kind of feels like the new kid on the block. I saw a quote from his tight end, Kenyon Sadiq. He said he's never seen Moore in a panic. He's always cool, always collected. That's definitely going to be put to the test in against this Penn State defense. I see the Ducks getting 3.5 on the road here, Phil.
Yeah, and David started the today's show by talking about backdoor covers, and Penn State's the king of the backdoor cover this year. They gave up a touchdown on the last play of the game last week against Villanova. It throws it up. The guy makes a tremendous catch in the end zone. And Nevada's only touchdown came in the final seconds for a backdoor cover as well. So 2 of those spread losses, backdoor covers at the end of the game at the last seconds. And those are the only 2 touchdowns Penn State's defense has allowed all season. They're holding opponents to 150 yards per game below their average. A couple things concern me with Oregon here. First of all, while Oregon has played the tougher schedule on paper, that Oregon State, Northwestern, Oklahoma State, Montana State, the total amount of wins those 4 have combined for over FBS opponents is 0. None of them have beaten an FBS team this year. So, Penn State, I believe FIU's actually won a game over an FBS opponent. Actually has a better record in that category. The second thing that concerns me is Dante Moore on the road. Now, when he was at UCLA in 2023, he started 2 road games at Oregon State and at Utah. And in both of those games, he threw 3 interceptions, and UCLA came up short. Now, he's got a better supporting cast here, much better supporting cast. I like the way Lemur's running the football, and the receiving core is outstanding. But this is whiteout conditions at Penn State. It's going to be the loudest stadium. Utah's tough. Whiteout for Penn State's going to be even tougher. Traveling across the country, all those time zones as well. I'm going to take Penn State minus the 3.5 in this one.
Okay.
I remember, Phil, when West Virginia opened at Penn State a couple of years ago, and they did the whiteout, and holy smokes, you couldn't hear a dang thing. Mixing that radio broadcast was tough. Another game that I think might be a little tough to watch this weekend. 7:45 kick, Kentucky at South Carolina. It's always a good one when these 2 teams match up, but both these teams are, a little bit on the tougher side this year. Kentucky coming off a bye. South Carolina's dropped their last 2. It's the Cutter Boley era, it appears, in Kentucky as he took over for Zach Calzada with the shoulder injury last week against Eastern Michigan. Now he's been named the starter. So it's him versus Lenoris Sellers, who did have his best game last week against Missouri because he's been a little rocky to start, but he had over 300 yards, a couple of touchdowns against Missouri in that 9-point loss. This one, I don't love a side here. I don't know if you do, Phil, but the spread is 40, or the over-under is 46.5. The under has hit in 9 of the last 10, and I see your finger pointing down. I think you agree.
Yeah, I do. I think it will be a low-scoring game. You look at Kentucky, their defense playing well, and let's go back to Cutter Boley and take a look. Last year, he really struggled statistically at a 2-4 ratio, completed less than 50% of his passes. But his starts last year, or the games he played, the bulk of the action, were at Tennessee, at Texas. I believe he even played against Florida in that one. And so, he played some really tough defenses. The one manageable defense he played, Murray State, he had a good game. And he had a good game against Eastern Michigan. This is going to be a tougher test for him. Kentucky was actually favored in last year's game by 6.5 points. So they're playing with revenge. And if you watch that game, South Carolina's defensive front seven just absolutely destroyed Kentucky the entire game. Their quarterback was running through for their life. But the majority of that defensive front seven's gone for South Carolina. So they're not as stout defensively. But South Carolina impressed me last week, going into Missouri, only losing by 9. A game they actually led at the half, led in the third quarter. I thought they showed a lot of stuff there. I agree with you, David. I find a tough time laying points like this with South Carolina or taking Kentucky on the road in a hostile environment. But under seems to be the play here. So good pick there.
We like the under in Columbia. David, I know you mentioned we had one viewer chime in from Mexico. We've got Sean York chiming in from Canada.
Ross, the Great White North.
International.
Yeah. How about that? Ross agrees with Phil. He likes Bama. We've got Daryl back in the saddle again. He watches every week. Love that, Daryl. Love the interaction there. I've got one last game on the docket here, Phil. BYU at Colorado. Cougars 3-0 against the spread, but they're on the road for back-to-back weeks here. Done a lot of traveling. They were at East Carolina last week, now heading to Boulder. Spread is under a touchdown. BYU do anything for you here?
Yeah, I lean with BYU in this one. I think when you look at Colorado, they do play better at home. Go back to the opening game of the season against Georgia Tech. It was actually tied 20-20 against a really good Georgia Tech team. Georgia Tech went down, got a touchdown, beat them 27-20. But keep in mind, maybe the reason it was close in 2020 was the fact that Georgia Tech turned the ball over on their first 3 possessions. They basically set Colorado up in that game, and maybe BYU won't be as generous. I like the fact that Bear Bachmeier went on the road last week, got some experience in a road start, and East Carolina is a tough place to play. Hit 18-26 for 246 yards, so did well. I like the way L.J. Martin's running the football. He's averaging 8.6 yards per carry. Colorado went back to Caden Salter last week. Remember, it was Ryan Staub for 2 weeks ago against Houston. Salter last week looked good, but he's an up-and-down quarterback, and he ebbs and flows. I like the way the BYU defense is playing, holding opponents to 126 below their average. I do think BYU is a legitimate Big 12 contender. I think Colorado's going to finish in the bottom half of the Big 12. So I'll lay the points here on the road. As long as it's not over a touchdown, I'm happy with BYU.
All right, grab the Cougars while they're under a touchdown. I'm seeing 6.5 right now. Phil, looks like we've hit about 25 to 30 games there. At the end of every show, we like to get your top 3 plays for the week. Where are you heading this week?
Well, I'm going to do one that we talked about, which is Tennessee. I think they're undervalued at -7.5. And then 2 we didn't talk about. I like Utah State plus 22.5 against Vanderbilt. And Vandy's 4-0 against the spread, but Utah State's unbeaten against the spread. Couple notes there for Vanderbilt. Last week was a revenge game for them. They've got Alabama on deck. This is not a revenge game, and they're just a heavy favorite, and they're also 3-6 as a home favorite. And Bronco Mendenhall as a 20-plus dog. Go all the way back to his BYU days. I'm talking about BYU, Virginia, New Mexico, Utah State. As a 20-plus dog, he's 7-1. So I'll take Utah State plus the 22.5 there. And then how about the battle of the option offenses? Now, every time our Air Force plays Army, Army plays Navy, I always like the dog and I like the under, right? Why is that? because when you run an option offense, your advantage is that the other team can't prepare for you well. They don't have the players to run the option against you in the scout team. And it usually takes you 2-3 series to get caught up to the speed, and you probably never really get caught up. But when option plays option, you can simulate the option and thing. And what we end up with is low-scoring games. And if you look at all the military games, when they play each other, they're all low-scoring, and the underdog generally wins. Well, guess what? Rice is running the option this year. So is Navy. And you got option versus option. The totals, or the spread's 14.5. I like the under, and I like Rice. The official play is Rice. So I'm going with Rice, Utah State, and Tennessee as the 3 plays this week.
All right. Love it. Phil, before we wrap things up here, anything you want to fill the listeners in on what's going on your website, philsteele.com?
Yeah, take the Phil Steele Plus tour with selections. Had a losing week last week, which is it depresses me. I like to win, for crying out loud. I got 7 selections up there this week, 5 quick hitters, so 12 free plays for you. Just take the tour. It's on YouTube right now. That's the Phil Steele Plus tour. Go to philsteele.com, click right on the main menu.
All right, and DK, tell them about Home Field one more time. We love these guys.
We do love Home Field Apparel. They are in Fayetteville this weekend, so make sure you go check them out. They got events tonight and Friday as they lead up to Arkansas, trying to get right against Notre Dame, who just got their first win last week. And as Phil mentioned, Arkansas is trying to not, let the game literally slip through their fingers for the 3rd straight week. So go check out those events in Fayetteville. They're on Home Field Apparel on Twitter, on Instagram. Go check those guys out. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use our code PHIL15. That's PHIL15. You can get sweet gear like this Diamond Hogs t-shirt that I'm wearing to support the Arkansas Razorbacks. By the way, Tripp, you didn't ask.
Look at
Florida State.
Boy they sent me here. 99, wire to wire, baby. Chris Winkie, Peter Warwick. One of the best teams to ever do it.
Tripp, hey, and how about a shout out to Kyle with his Louisiana Tech team?
We actually just had a shout out to Louisiana Tech in the chat.
We did.
They said they're playing some really good football this year.
They certainly are.
Blew out New Mexico State and Southern Miss the last 2 weeks, and their only loss is to LSU, for crying out loud. I love it since Baker retook the quarterback position. I think that was huge.
Absolutely. Awesome. Tripp, I do have a play if you want it for this week. One
I
shot.
Always want it. Always want your plays. What do you got?
I'm down bad after missing back to back, but I'm going back to the one that started it all for me this year in 2025. Give me TCU on the road to cover the 2.5 at Arizona State.
At Arizona State. Okay.
How about you, Tripp?
I love that. That should be a really fun game. I'm just going to stick with the Hokies and the points. I'm not going to get too crazy. But I love Virginia Tech. Last I saw it was 10.5, but we've got 9.5 down the dock. So whatever. Either way,
I think 9.5. Tripp. You can have 9.5. Yeah,
I think
you
can have
9.5.
Dog. I think they could win the game in Raleigh. It just
get the
feels
best price. 10.5 could be a big number.
And this is the way I would explain it. I just feel it in my left knee that Virginia Tech is going to give NC State a really, really hard time this weekend. All right. That's an hour. That's a great show. Phil, we appreciate your time. As always, we hit 25, 30 games there. Hopefully get you guys an edge as you make your picks going into the weekend in college football. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Time. Phil Steele Show.